Hey, good evening, and welcome to the DanTheMessenger podcast broadcast brought to you by Hope for Humanity 2020 Hope House here in Orlando. And today, my co-host is going to be Miss Nurse Nicole. And before we get started, I know we've had some great presidents. Right now, there are a lot of people that are just so excited about our current president and everything he's doing. And I figured, since we have such great presidents, let's hear from another former president speak on something that we all know has happened and is happening and happened before.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They fail both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment, and that was wrong. So today, on behalf of another generation of American leaders and another generation of American citizens, the United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments, to their families, and to their communities. When the government does wrong, we have a moral responsibility to admit it. The duty we owe to one another to tell the truth and to protect our fellow citizens from excesses like these is one we can never walk away from. Our government failed in that duty, and it offers an apology to the survivors and their families, and to all the American people who must be able to rely upon the United States to keep its word, to tell the truth, and to do the right thing.
Yes, unfortunately, that was Slick Willie and explaining what we did at Los Alamos with dropping atomic bombs and all the gaslighting we did to the communities over the next several decades. And I got a feeling that we are going to hear another president, maybe 10 or 15, 20 years from now, saying the same thing about biological gain of function, Anthony Fauci, DARPA and friends, spike proteins that are causing this chronic systemic dysregulation and chronic illness crisis that me and all my friends in the front lines are currently seeing, have been seeing, and have been reporting on. So with that, I want to introduce and welcome our co-host, Nurse Nicole. Nurse Nicole, how are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm so glad to be here. How are you?
Well, every day above the dirt is a beautiful day. It's a gift from God. And as a Christian, as a fellow Christian as you, it always empowers me to continue forward with the message. What is our favorite Bible verse that you like to say a lot and I like to share a lot?
Isaiah 6:8. And then the voice of the Lord said, "Whom shall I send, and whom shall go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me."
Send us, send all of us, send every one of us we possibly can, because these are biblical times. And we do this, we try to share and bring things to you in so many different ways to kind of show you different vantage points, different people, different professionalities, different credentialed experts, sharing what they're seeing. And, with Bill Clinton sharing and stating that type of announcement that he did make, it was unbelievable that he did it. And I'm sure most people prefer that they don't hear that type of stuff, but to go, our governments would never do something like that to us. Well, there's a former president that's a known liar, but at least he's telling the truth for one time in his life on what we actually, the horrors that we did. And we have been trying desperately, not just to tell you that this was coming, because now it's here. There's no more if, the data's in. Like, we're seeing the numbers around the globe. It's not just an American thing. Vaccine injuries, spike protein induced injuries are not only serious and real, but it's hitting now our youngest demographics. And that's when we know we have a massive, massive, massive problem. So early on in 2020, when I had Hope for Humanity and the charity started and the podcast and Shaquille's network, I'd say we have 99 problems and COVID's going to be one for a long time. It's because we knew they were gain of function. We knew there were spike proteins that were producing, self-amplifying, that were going to continue to cause this. And then the injections just that tripled the amount of people that we're going to be seeing from this, what we call the silent war, which will be in history books 20, 30 years from now, because the amount of death that we are continuing to see. How do we fix this? Well, we start getting help. We start putting the fires out of the immunocompromised, that their immune systems are so inflamed that they're literally getting their own ass kicked by their immune system that eventually will burn out on itself. So we said, let's come up with some solutions. And you've got two of them. And I think anybody that's in the MAHA movement, any moms across America, I mean, there's so many mom groups out there. I'm so proud of the mothers of America, because you mess with the cubs, you mess with the lionesses cubs, you got the whole pride coming from you. Amen. And that's what I love about lions, is the females, they stick together in their prides, and they're vicious. You touch their children, you got problems. So let's unpack what you're advocating on these bills are and the importance of them. Let's talk about one to start off. We talked about Cody's Law a lot.
Right.
And we'll get back into Cody's Law, but I like the second bill because this will connect more to the MAHA moms, or just moms in general.
Right.
Why is this important?
So, for the listeners, it's really important to know that we have something called informed consent. You just saw that clip with Bill Clinton, which is absolutely incredible that he was actually telling some truth in that, discussing how informed consent was not provided. And essentially, it's giving you the risk versus benefit of a treatment or a product or something that you may be exposed to. And so informed consent in anything when it related to healthcare is very important. So one of the bills that Maya Han, who is one of the admin for Florida CHD, has put together is a bill proposal. It's SB as in boy 188, and it's the Sudden Death in the Young Reporting Act, which basically states, for starters, anyone under the age of 20 years old who has died suddenly, and died suddenly or sudden death is very clearly defined. There's multiple definitions that are included in this bill, that it is required for emergency countermeasures and or any vaccination within 90 days of their death be reported to the medical examiner so that it can be documented and tracked to see if it in fact was part of the cause of death. This also helps shape when it comes to streamlining reporting systems and documents, and also making all 24 districts across the state of Florida comply with the same requirements and documents to report to the Department of Health through the Florida Department of Health. And this will eventually be utilized in a database that the CDC uses in sudden death that can be pulled from to then teach on preventative strategies and preventative measures on things like cardiovascular risk and or sleep patterns. And so the bill is very robust. It's gaining a lot of attention. The first to sign and file it, if you will, was Senator Ileana Garcia. So we have to give her mad props for taking the leap for that. We are currently looking for a House representative in the state of Florida. For those of you that may not know, you have to have both a House rep and a senator sponsor in order for a bill to be able to move forward. So we're still currently looking for a House representative, but we've gotten a lot of great feedback. A lot of individuals in the state and beyond think it's a fantastic idea. They are shocked that it's not already happening. And it just goes to show you, when people ask you when a sudden death happens in a infant, child, or young adolescent, and people speculate, what it could be. And most of the time we hear SIDS and what that could contribute sometimes to the vaccines, which we have information from parents that say usually a vaccine within 7 days of receiving a vaccine is when their child died suddenly. And so this is something that will be recorded and tracked and documented accordingly so that there could be actual data and information used to then, again, talk about these prevention strategies, also give family closures. There's a lot of things that come with this. So that's the first bill, SB 188, filed by Ileana Garcia, the Sudden Death in the Young Reporting Act.
And, you know, it's sad that besides SIDS, the last 5 years, sudden deaths are in the news so much.
Yes.
And it's almost like the game that can't shoot straight or running their news lines, because everything is always baffled, mysterious,
Right.
you know, like anything but what could possibly have changed in the last 5.5 years. But I'm going to tell you what, the nurses and the doctors, the ones that are in the medical hospitals currently but are not speaking out,
I know.
even though they're not speaking out from what they're currently saying because they don't want to lose their jobs,
Right.
they're speaking out in another way. And it's making headlines today, I think.
Doctors and nurses.
Yeah, who'd have thought it? So the NHS has a vaccine problem. Staff don't want the jab. So doctors, nurses and other frontline NHS staff are shunning the flu vaccine. So this is the flu vaccine, not the coronavirus vaccine, in ever greater numbers, with almost 9 in 10 staff at one of England's largest hospital trusts unvaccinated last winter. Oh, I wonder what changed in the last 5 years to make people suspicious of vaccines.
It's called their doctors and nurses. Doctors and nurses.
Yeah, who'd have thought it? So the NHS has a vaccine problem. Staff don't want.
And I'm one of those nurses.
9 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what they're seeing that they are not speaking about. I'm just wondering what possibly could be happening in the hospital system, healthcare system right now, that has practitioners of all realms going, no, we're good. No, you can keep that. We'll take our chances being amongst the sick.
Right. And that's the thing, right? We have Cleveland Clinic studies on both the flu vaccine and the mask discussing the lack of efficacy and also, the risk versus benefit. It just doesn't add up for the majority of the population. Again, I'm not here to tell you not to take a certain vaccine, but you do need to be informed. You do need to have all the information. What are the ingredients? What can happen if you take this and have a bad reaction or adverse outcome? We don't have anything in place to protect you because of the 1986 Act, where essentially the manufacturers for the vaccine companies are not liable. And so a lot of times these individuals are being told that this is the right thing to do for public health. They're being coerced and told that this is safe and effective. And then they move forward with these vaccines, and some things happen, and health issues sometimes manifest and progress and do not go away. And so this is to reach those individuals to know that there are risks, and where there is risk, there must be choice. And I'm one of those nurses that does not get the flu vaccine. We have to exempt, even in the state of Florida. And why it's so important with this particular sudden death in the Young Reporting Act, that it's not just COVID or flu, it's any vaccine on the market and or any emergency countermeasure that could be introduced that may not be approved by the FDA, but kind of ushered and rushed out there, that could cause a potential poor outcome or death that must be reported. So this is why it's so important that you have that informed consent and you know the risks so you can make the best informed decision. And
again, if the last 5 years had not happened, you wouldn't see any of this kind of stuff happen, period. But when people went and got this, and then within a week or 2 weeks later, they're dropping dead or stuff's happening, and then the government's going, these are not your droids. There's nothing to see here. Move along. Shut up. Well, we do have critical thinking. It's still alive. Thank God that there are still 20% of the population that can think and go, something's not right here.
Exactly.
And we need more Christians to be unveiled. And I think that's what happens, why they cannot stand Christianity, is because there is a certain amount of awakening that happens to the light and the darkness.
Right.
And what has happened, if you cannot tell, the last 5.5 years, things have gotten way darker in our world. Society has not made a massive shift towards just unstability, making my words up here. Thank you, Strokes. The unsustainability of the psyche of the population. You can see it everywhere you go, from how people are reacting, how they drive, how their attitudes, personalities have changed. And in 21, when I was working with Dr. George Roselle, who's a senior fellow in neurofeedback, at their conference in 21, they laid out chapter, and I have the files, and I shared them to people back in 21, of what was going to happen to the psyche and neurocognitive disorders that they had seen from these spikes and these lipid nanoparticles and so forth and so on. And now it's here. So part of why we talk is not just because it's in our teachings. It isn't just, if you be quiet, it's not a good thing for Christians. You're supposed to speak up. But Americans were taught when we were growing up that if you see something, say something. If if something's going down, be a good citizen. And we're credentialed citizens that are not only credentialed, but in our own oath, like as a paramedic, if you're not even on duty and you see an accident, you're supposed to stop.
Exactly. Well, and then you had the other generation that I was caring for in the hospital during the pandemic that were raised in a time where you didn't question the physicians, right? The physicians knew, they were to be trusted. They would never lead you astray. They, in theory, had your best interest. And I'm not saying that all healthcare workers and all physicians are, nefarious and trying to do anything to harm you. But there's a lot of people that knew something was amiss, saw things happening, and still decided not to speak up for their own reasons. And this further complicated health of Americans and globally and caused a lot of unnecessary death. And so you had this contrast, right, of certain individuals that, like, when you see something, you say something, and then the other group that's like, well, the doctors have your best interest at heart. They would not try to harm you. And it was just like this implosion of just contradictive, behaviors. And I think why it dragged out the pandemic in the method that it did, because you just had such polar opposites trying to figure out what the other person is doing. And it just kind of made it worse.
And now we have one in every three of the population around the globe is suffering some form of this spike protein-induced chronic illness. A lot of them, I just went to St. Petersburg last weekend. Beautiful town, got to walk the pier, a lot of healthy people. There was a Halloween thing going on, and I went to one of these sauna cold plunge, because I do sauna. And so I wanted to see and check it out. And I was in a communal sauna, so there was just a mix of everybody. And everyone is pretty young. And one of the people there was talking about going to this doctor, getting their methylation testing. And so I'm picking up on what they're selling, going, they're all sick. They're not admitting that they're sick, but there's a reason why they're there. And so I just go, hey, I worked with chronic illness and I work at an integrative clinic, and sounds like you are going to an integrative doctor. And she goes, yeah, and then I said, well, what we've noticed in the last 5 years is a lot of the younger population starts having signs and symptoms. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is educate and advocate. Right. So if you're going through something post-COVID or post this, you're not crazy. Right. Medical professionals that understand this are seeing it. And we're trying to get protocols and basics out there, because that's part of the front line. I've literally been going the entire time. I'm like a combat medic at this point, 5 years straight on the war zone, trying to pull the walking wounded off the battlefield to get them patched up to practitioners and clinics that can help them. And our governments are failing in that matter in spades. Like, it is incredible how neglect they are and acknowledging what we are currently seeing. Now, Bobby, listen, when we speak of gain of function protein, spike proteins, Bobby knows this 7 ways to Sunday, because I know 2 different people that were bioweapons credentialed experts that have informed, debriefed Children's Health Defense nationally on what's going on. So I got this clip. I'm gonna play it, Bobby. I think this is before he became HHS secretary, but he really kind of lays it out of what's going down. And once we can get to acceptance as a group, as Christians in the desert, trying to get to the land of milk and honey, this will make more sense, because we're not conspiracy people. I work with credentialed experts around the globe that have been trying to get help to our brothers and sisters. And listen to Bobby, what he has to say, because this is important, how people shift tonality once they get in the office. So there's something kind of weird, but I still love Bobby.
The Pentagon was very worried about actually launching a full-blown bioweapons arms race because they said nobody, this is very sketchy. The Patriot Act, exemptions are very sketchy and people don't even know about it. And so they didn't want to do it. So they took the money that Cheney gave them, $2.2 billion, and they funneled it through NIH. And it all went through Anthony Fauci. So beginning in 2002, Anthony Fauci got a 68% raise from the Pentagon for doing bioweapons development.
Wow.
And he got a raise of billions of dollars a year to do it. And then he started that's when they started doing all this gain of function. And then in 2014, 3 of those bugs escaped in high profile escapes from different labs in the United States. Fauci built all these new labs at BU, at Galveston to do his shenanigans. And so 3 of the bugs escaped, and they received publicity. They had smallpox and a lot of really bad things. And then Congress held hearings on it. Everybody was angry. These bugs escaped, and 300 scientists, top scientists, sent letters to Obama saying, you got to shut down Anthony Fauci because he's going to create a pandemic. And so Obama ordered a moratorium. And at that time, Fauci had 18 different gain-of-function experiments he was doing around the United States. But Obama ordered him to shut them all down, but he didn't. He instead moved his stuff offshore to Wuhan, where he could do it out of sight of these 300 scientists and nosy White House officials who were trying to shut him down. And they continued to do it with Ralph Baric, the same people he was funding here, Ralph Baric,
Wow.
and Peter Daszak, and they moved their operations to the Wuhan lab.
So that was our HHS Secretary's own words. All right, so, COVID.gov, COVID.gov. If you go there, you're going to see all the receipts on the programs, all the intricacies of gain-of-function technology, and where these adverse reactions are coming to. As a long hauler, as a first wave March 2020 long hauler, and I told Nicole this the other day, she didn't know this data, the statistic, that 38% of all long haul syndrome, people that were not jabbed, that are suffering long COVID, come from March 2020. 38% of them come from that very first wave, so the first hit. And this cluster that I'm showing right now of signs and symptoms, there's 160 on here, and it came out September of 2020. As far as I know, that's way before the first jibby jabby ever came out.
Correct.
And if you put this overlapping with the updated vaccine injured signs and symptoms, which is over 200, they are almost identical. And so we knew early on that these spike proteins that we were reporting on from SARS-CoV-2 were almost identical type of proteins that are being generated, self-amplified now from the jab, which makes absolutely zero sense. If we were trying to have a solution to a problem, we knew the problem was originally from these SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins. Why the hell would we do it the same way with jab? Why do we make that mechanism delivery to supposedly train the immune system to these spike proteins that the wild strain was doing? So I was saying very early on, you've got Godzilla versus Megazilla. You got the airborne version and you got the injected version.
Yeah.
One's much higher, but they both do the same thing. And what they were seeing in the original trials that Brooke Jackson was part of, and I had access to in real time, that if they had carried that wild strain already and then took the jab, it was game on.
Yeah.
Your immune system was going, holy hell. So we have so much science that has been withheld from the general population, a basic science of how the immune system works and how it fights and reacts. And when you induce a foreign protein that is almost identical to like a spike protein, not spike, but a peanut-induced anaphylactic reaction to the immune system, it's almost that same type of level, except it's deadlier from what we're saying, long-term implications. And we've not seen anything like this since the 80s. We've not seen a chronic illness, death-causing crisis since the 80s. And right now, I said before, this would be 1985 if we were in the 80s, and we're no better in 2025 than we were in 1985 on how, as we as a society, is tackling this. So it's going to take courage of the line of Judas and Lionesses out there, the experts, to keep speaking our truth, right? And keep sharing, because they didn't know in that little group at the sauna, they didn't know it was spike protein induced.
Yeah.
And they were just, as soon as I said like maybe 2 minutes worth of stuff, the questions would not stop for 30 minutes. And so that's the injustice to the youngest generation. We need to, if it's one person, one people, 5 people, 5,000 people, 50 million people, it does not matter. We need to speak the truth so we can help our people stuck in the desert and get them to land of milk and honey. And so when I get around my people, my Christians, my true Christians, like the believers, the disciples, the ones that are remnants, like Pete Duck Chambers running for governor, people that are really trying to do faith in action with works, not with just talking, is how we get through this. So another thing that, besides always talking about COVID and what we're dealing with, we're doing it because the amount of people that are sick. When we testified 21, we told them 36 million Americans would implode our medical system within the decade to the tune of $4.5 to $5 trillion left untreated. Well, that was off, because we weren't thinking in May of 21 that they were going to have 3 times the amount of injured from the jab. So we're looking at almost 100 million Americans. And we have a nursing shortage, right? Every state has a nursing shortage. Yeah. And as far as I know, the schools are pumping them out as quick as they possibly can. And some of them don't even have licenses. They're not from America.
Well, and so, so I think that's all by design too, okay, that we have this nursing shortage. It's really corporate greed and these organizations that don't see the best interest of the company. And so instead of staffing appropriately and paying accordingly for the intense amount of liability that we carry in the hospital, not to mention since the pandemic, violence against healthcare workers is increased 50% tenfold, as well as over 30% plus in mental health illness. And so we have our own, pandemic amongst the healthcare worker, field, if you will. And so we have these nursing shortages. We have a lack of nurses that are willing to show up in these poor conditions and toxic environments, with an increase of patients that are sick, whether that be from the COVID virus or the actual vaccination. And a lot of them, as Dan is mentioning, they don't understand that they're actually vaccine injured or maybe affected as a long hauler from the virus. And so they're coming in as a revolving door, constantly sick, stroke, heart attack, sepsis, neurological issues, and they're not making that connection because they never received informed consent. And then people like Dan and I and many others are stuck in this echo chamber, so that 5 years later, as much as we have found and as much data is being brought to the forefront, and as many people that are coming forward who are not anti-vax because they actually got the vaccine and are saying that they've had these health changes and or they've lost a loved one almost immediately after receiving the jab, is just astronomical to think in such the numbers that they're coming out as, that there's still people that don't know that this information exists. And so when people constantly ask, why do you keep talking about it? Why do you keep saying the same thing over and over again? It's just like what Dan said. It's because there's so many people that don't know. They still don't know because the information is censored and silenced. And people like us are trying to bring the groups together. There's so many medical freedom groups, especially in the state of Florida, that we want to be able to bring together and work alongside one another for the greater good of humanity, to save patients, to educate, give them informed consent, but also resources and hope, like Dan has, Hope House Orlando, and being able to show them some light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's so important that we have these conversations, as redundant as they may seem, because this is how you change the trajectory of where we're going. And this is how you save lives.
In the litmus test I was using like 3 years ago, I would say, all right, have you been to more weddings or more funerals in the last 3 years?
Wow.
Easy question.
Yeah.
And everyone knows the answer.
Yeah.
And the great pandemic of 2020 ended in 2020. So usually after a die-off, the numbers go down. The deaths go down. They don't go up.
Right.
And then all these chronic induced secondary illnesses don't go up 600, 700, 1,500, 3,600% year over year. And it doesn't happen globally the way it's been happening. So you can fool all the people all the time. Some of the people, some of the people, some of the time. All the people, some of the time. But you can't fool all the people all the time. Basically, you can't continue to fool and lie your way through this. And insurance companies are, in the first time in history, taking baths. They're losing money quarter after quarter. Why is that? Because their patients are stuck in the hospital 30, 60, 90 days, and they're getting very expensive treatments. And for whatever reason, our good old loving, caring hospital system loves to give out that stuff from World War II. Mustard gas, and call it a therapy. Right. And the only reason why mustard gas got converted into
chemotherapy,
a chemo drug, was it did the same thing that cancer did. And they thought, well, heck, if we just beat it to the punch, that we can wipe out all this. It's the pseudoscience behind some of this stuff is maddening. If we get ahead of the immune system and kill off as many cells as possible, when we're done with that therapy, then the immune system will come back online. That's the whole. That's it. That is the only theory behind their scientific basis of pseudoscience.
It's not even a good one.
No, and I know this from being in the pharmaceutical world. When I worked for Genentech, we had a drug that competed against Pfizer's Adderall drug. And same thing. Once I learned how Pfizer and pseudoscience created ADD, ADHD with going, hey, if you're a speedy person and you take a speedy type product, two positive equals a negative. That was they paid some dumbass scientists to go, sure, we'll sign off on that. And that's how they got a stimulant like ephedrine, or not ephedrine, but
was it the phentermine?
Well, fen was the weight loss product that was also causing heart attacks, deaths, and strokes, very much kind of like the new GLP-1s that are shrinking hearts, making people go blind, making them not be able to hold down food for the rest of their life. Yeah, I mean, it's never ending with the debauchery our scientific and our pharmaceutical worlds are capable of doing. And our captured government organizations, FDA, CDC, and the rest. Hopefully, Bobby can unhinge all that, because supposedly there's an internal war going on right now with some of those people. But it's been a rotten and dim mark situation for a long time in the medical world. And we were blinded by it because we look at the light and not the darkness, thinking, it was a mistake. Oh, it was an accident. But what about the trials? Why did Pfizer want to hold the trials for 65 years? Why did we have to sue them to get them released? And now, even though all those there's like 15 pages of just stacked on adverse reactions from the trials. And you still have doctors out there, I forget the one guy's name, he's become my pet now on X, that speaks out in 2025 still defending and saying that we're just lunatics. Like, really? You think all these credentialed experts in the medical field that are seeing these patients, that have all the patients' records, that they're just being gaslit? No, they're caring and trying to help patients suffering from these spike proteins that we can actually at least measure the antibodies for now. So yeah, you're right. These aren't sexy, fun conversations. But when people are in bed and they've not been out of bed for a year, 2 years, 3 years, when they can't breathe, when they're just sucking for life and begging for help, those people need a voice. And as a Christian, we're just being a voice for God's people, because God's people are not for genocide. And that's essentially what has happened. Right. We have done systematically of blocking early treatment before the jabs came out, vilifying things that we now know that not only would work for COVID, but oh my goodness, a guy by the name of MAHA, and he's talking about these 3 fun drugs that are saving millions of people's lives right now. Right. And they're at the state of Florida. Our governor is actually going to do the ivermectin bill.
Right. Right.
Lord and Savior, I was blocked and banned for life on YouTube for medical disinformation for sharing a PSA on ivermectin, and now our state government is going to make it over the counter. Thank you, Jesus. So,
but that's what people need to know. Like, it has been systematically since 2020 a huge problem where the people have been told one thing and another has happened. You know, again, it was these things are not happening. What you're seeing is false. You know, we're at the bedside as nurses seeing these patients die from the protocols at the hospital with, you know, the ventilator and remdesivir. Then you roll out the vaccine. We have really sick people that are being told that you should be the first in line to roll up your sleeve. We're talking very immunocompromised people that once they got the vaccine did not do well and started to have a ton of health issues, if not pass away. And then, like you said, we had treatments on the market like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. Doctors were demonized. People were losing their license, being reported, you know, prescribing it, trying to give people the last ditch effort at life. And then you had physicians who were trying to report adverse outcomes to VAERS. They were also reported to the Board of Medicine. And then the list goes on and on. And, you know, speaking back to the insurance, there was cases of people coming forward that the insurance wasn't covering anything because the vaccine was an experiment. It was not FDA approved. And so these people were losing not only their breadwinner of the family, but then come to find out their insurance policies weren't paying out because the vaccine wasn't approved. It was an emergency use authorization product. And then you've got the whole story of, like you're saying too, Dan, like these deaths are increasing. These health issues are increasing, and we're being told that this is normal. I don't know how many times I go on social media and see different posts or clips from a news article or whatnot, or social media that is saying that a young person just died suddenly. And then there's some whack ass excuse, pardon my language, that's attached to the article to suggest that this is normal. They are normalizing the death of healthy individuals who otherwise had no other issues except getting these jabs or not being treated accordingly when they had COVID. And why these bills in Florida are so important when we're trying to identify what's really taking out these young individuals that are dying suddenly, but also people like Cody's Law who are permanently injured. And again, not just by the COVID-19 vaccine, and have no way to, one, be identified as a human being that's actually injured because there's still stigma attached to that, but also what resources are in place to take the burden off the already broken healthcare system. There are none, because you have to identify that a vaccine injury exists. You have to allow the physicians to diagnose and then treat it. But then what treatment options are available, again, with you and Hope House Orlando and different alternatives being available? Like, we need the listeners to understand, like, you have been told and fed a consistent lie over and over and over again, and the truth has come out over and over again to contradict what you were originally told, and people still aren't awake enough. They're not joining forces to go, this is insane, we cannot let this happen again.
And, you know, Hope for Humanity 2020, May 10th, 2020 was when I founded Hope for Humanity as a long haul organization. It's pioneer. It's like, I've looked it up. We're in the top 5 for registration. So as a original founder, survivor of this, and speaker on it, an advocate who's been on Shaquille O'Neal's podcast, feature since 2020, speaking on this stuff and helping with the science and going, yo, we got 99 problems. Now it's more like we got 9,999 problems, and COVID and bio spikes are still going to be number 1. And let's see what this says here. Here's you talk about whack stuff. Here's a whack one. Warning to anyone who sleeps with blinds open. It may increase risk of stroke or heart attacks by 40%, studies suggest. Straight propaganda.
Gaslighting.
Straight horseshit. But here you go. This is what they're putting out there to feed you, since they can't explain why all these people are just dropping dead. And then here's another little headline. Cancer rates rising in Gen X and millennials compared to older generations, study finds. Yeah, it's already down to the 20-year-olds. They're getting cancers by, I think it's the statistic is by 2035, 1 in every 5 will have some form of cancer. So we don't know, something crazy is going on. Just you know, we have no idea. We don't know any tests to look at. We can't tell you anything. Oh, there are tests out there. Oh, there are ways of looking. But your traditional Western trained doctor is not going to go down this road. Now, any doctor from the 80s that was tackling HIV and that was dealing with AIDS patients would know this panel backwards and forwards, because this is your immune system. And it should be like, it almost should be like that this is your brain, the egg commercial, Friday. This is your brain on drugs. Well, this is your immune system on fire. And I can tell you, your immune system does not have a finite amount of resources. And after a while, that immune system will implode upon itself. Now, what was the other? Was it, you said Harvard? Weren't they the ones that did the study with
Cleveland
people we know?
You talk about the Yale study?
Yeah,
or
Yale. That's it. Yale study.
Yale study.
Yale.
Yale.
It's like the oldest college, and it was the building's older than the damn country
That's
itself,
true.
right?
Yes.
Baids, BAIDS. Their study, their people, like, so credentialed, prestigious university, and it's a nothing burger after it came out. So what did they have to gain from that? What did the prestigious Yale University have to gain from putting inaccurate information if that was true? They didn't. They're doing God's work. They're doing good work. And in the audience, we can ignore everything that's going on here, but the data is the data. Right. Now, we are excited because next month we're going to be starting a once a month show together where we're going to have other advocates, not from just health, but from all realms. Because we know as Christians, this is a biblical war. This is good versus evil. Yes. You've got the Muslims decided it's time to start killing Christians. We're just going to knock off 50,000 Christians and no one's going to talk about it. Because why? Because they're from Uganda or they're from, I can't think of which country it is in Africa. But it reminds me of when I interviewed Sam Childers, the machine gun preacher, who is in Uganda, who did go back there in the 90s to save children that were their Christian families are being killed. They were taking the children and converting them into child soldiers by drugging them and everything else. It's essentially what they're doing again, except they're just killing all the Christians this time around. So we have a holy war on our hands. We got Muslims moving in UK and England. Their mayor's shutting the citizens down. They're pissed off. They're arresting young girls that are defending themselves from foreigners with make sure nothing happens to their daughters. Like this is biblical in sense. So I've started reaching out to different people that are in the influencer realm or in the movements of their own right and go, hey, would you like to come on our show as a panel group where we kind of cover different topics and we start connecting different groups like Lord of the Rings, the Five Armies, or the Avengers, where everybody's coming together. Right. Because we're fearless as Christians. And if we come together and we unify and we stand in the gap for our people, we will get them out of the desert and we will get them into the land of milk and honey. We will get these bastards to stop stealing or taking our children, doing all kinds of horrendous things to these kids. Because what does that say in the Bible about if you were to hurt a child?
We're talking about like, to me it's eye for an eye, but which part?
the millstone, the hang of millstone, millstone. I'm sorry, I'm still a first level Christian guy. I'm sorry, I'm living the biblical war, and I should be reading the Bible even more and memorizing, but I'm memorizing the life and the front lines of what a Christian goes through, the persecution. People don't realize that I'm still a long hauler. I still deal with a chronic crisis, and I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
All right. That came from soup.
Oh, jeez.
And that's just to show you that a little bit of soup burnt me like that. It never would have done that to me 6 years ago. The changes that these spike proteins will do to the A&P of the body. Dr. Braun's has been talking about, who's a good buddy of mine, my Yoda, who's a bioweapons terror expert, that was one of the credentialed when we were hit, is now talking about the things that it does through your sweat. So when you are when you're breaking these spikes down and it's releasing out of your largest organ of your body, your skin, it's also changing how the skin is reacting. It's crazy because it ages on a cellular level. So I say that because most of us that have chronic injured from surviving these biospike proteins, this biological attack, we are literally hanging from our own crosses in different ways. Shelley's of the world, Danny Baker's, our friends, Carolina, and it's our duty to get our brothers off the cross, to give them that relief and the suffering that they've been going through, and to acknowledging it. And they need love, and that's I think how we get through this is, there's enough hate out in the world that we can bring the light into this darkness of love and caring for each other and being better people to each other and globally connecting. So I'm hoping that this show that we're going to do, Frontline Messengers, Christians, hopefully, if they're not Christians, look, you're still part of the tribe. Jesus hung out with anybody. He didn't care.
Right.
It's like me. I'm on the front. I don't care who I'm hanging out with. I just
Right.
care that we're helping people and spreading the good information and news.
And again, making sure that people understand that there's a whole group of people that receive this vaccine and they're not anti-vax, or they weren't at the time, and they weren't being recognized as someone who came forward with these health issues. And in order for us, in my opinion, to be able to move forward and grow together and help each other humanitarian wise, is you have to set all of those egos aside, your bias aside, and you have to look at the individual. Medicine is not a one size fits all, and it's so tragic that a lot of people were subjected to not receiving timely treatment when they had COVID because the government weaponized medications that should have been easily and readily available to them, and instead they were not given the treatment and have this, debilitating long haul type symptoms. And then again, the vaccine, individuals who were injured, they were not recognized as vaccine injured because that's taboo. That doesn't really happen. That's not, it's a conspiracy theory and all this other stuff, but they have been hurt. And because they've gone so long without being recognized as a vaccine injury and not having people want to treat and acknowledge and put their name on something like this, they have gotten sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And some of them may never come out of this. And it's trying to give them the best possible outcome, right? Give them some sort of quality of life to be able to be a human being in society. But most of them that Dan and I work with, they just want you to acknowledge that they exist. And no, their injury is not their identity, but it does take over what everything they do in their life. And so they want you to recognize that they exist, that they are real, not rare. And then they want to be able to have the same options to healthcare and alternatives to help treat their symptoms and try to get them out of this spiral cytokine storm and all the things that Dan usually talks about on this show with the injuries, whether it be from the virus or vaccine, so that they can have some sort of quality of life. I mean, we're talking the basic minimal requests from these individuals that have gone years. And some of them are no longer with us. Some of these people have taken their life.
Yeah, Anne, there's so many that are I'm so many of these groups. She just shared what she's been dealing with, and then yesterday she announced what her updates, and then she announced today she lost one of her good friends. So we are in that part of time where we're going to be losing a lot more people because the immune system can only take so much of an attack without help, and unfortunately, we just are going to have to keep dealing with this until enough of us goes, enough is enough, and we will deal with this the best way we possibly can. And I'm a music and movie person. I talked about the 4 movies that early on would kind of like the starter kit to what you're dealing with. And the band played on the Dallas Buyers Club, Philadelphia, and Rent. Each story kind of covers different aspects of the chronic crisis from the 80s. And then the most newest one that I've talked about is The Normal Heart, which kind of connected more to me with being an advocate and the founder of a charity trying to raise awareness. And Mark Ruffalo played the lead character, and he was a writer. And there were scenes where he is just frantically writing, "You guys are killing us. You're not just on and on of what he was seeing." And as much as you want to emotionally get to that level, it is so draining, and it turns a lot of the people off.
Yes.
So because we are both speaking unemotionally about a lot of things that we are seeing and dealing with, it's because we're just medically professionally trying to educate you in a way that you can understand. Why is my grandfather, why is my uncle, why is my wife, why is my son, my child so sick post-COVID, post-vaccine? Why have we taken them to a dozen different specialists and they go, "We don't know what's wrong with them"?
Right.
Well, it's because they're not connecting into integrative root cause and what could possibly be happening. So we're going, listen, there's a way out of this. There are practitioners, there's integrative medicine, there's root cause, there's alternative medicine.
Right.
The world before what we are trained in, Rockefeller medicine, there was hundreds, if not thousands of years of medicinal, herbal, natural ways of curing or helping people through illness. And thank you, Jesus, because the original, groups and injured groups have shared a ton of great things out there that can really help.
Right.
But when we are dealing with people that are in stage 3 and stage 4 of chronic illness-induced disease, they're going to need a lot more than just a little bit of a natural medicine. They're going to need, you got to get that toolbox out, and you got to utilize everything. IVs, high C IVs are going to be huge for a lot of chronic illness. Methylene blue IVs, but you have to understand methylene blue and what you are dealing with when you're giving that type of drug. And I see it taking off in popularity, but no one's talking about what you need to look for.
Exactly.
So to me, that's medical and malpractice by knowing you're putting a drug out there that has some amazing benefits, but also if you're taking Rockefeller medicine, serotonin syndrome can be a major issue. And knowing that a majority of our population are in some type of SSRIs and they're not getting their G6PD testing, I think it's a bad vibe to talk about something and not give you what you need to know if you're going to be taking something like that. So this is where credentialed experts, people that actually see patients, it's important. I love the rooms. I love the long haul rooms, the vaccines rooms. A lot of them doing good. But if you're not dealing with a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner or someone who can go through your blood work and look at your medications and everything else, you're playing fire when your immune system is already on fire. So
I'm so glad you said that. And that's so important because a lot of people think that, well, first of all, there's different stages of individuals that are sick. And so what may work for some may not work for others. And that's okay. There's a lot of things out there that may help you decrease some of your symptoms. As far as I know, Dan, and you can correct me, I have not met anyone yet that has had spike completely removed from their system and it not come back in some fashion. At this point, I feel like there's healing and there's things to decrease the load and maybe, decrease the symptoms that they're experiencing. But like you said, there's different stages of individuals that are going to need more than just ivermectin. But then going with what you just said, there's a lot of people that are trying to get their hands on ivermectin, methylene blue, hydroxychloroquine, and they're getting it and they don't know the mechanism of how it works. These medications and things can still harm you if you're not careful and you don't have someone that you can trust that's a licensed professional to look at the big picture. You could cause harm by taking these drugs that are typically safe and effective otherwise, and can cause some major health issues. So I'm glad you said that because a lot of people feel like, oh, well, if this person took it, I should be okay. Or, I hear this methylene blue is really good. But like you said, if you don't have proper testing, if you don't know what you're looking at, and you happen to bridge both Western and holistic medicine together and you're on these drugs for maybe mental health stuff, you can cause some serious adverse outcomes. And people are just not talking about that enough. And I think that's where the other side will come in and say, oh, they're taking the horse paste and this and that, and they don't know what they're doing. And, they're causing more harm. And I mean, in some situations, individuals have done that. They've taken these things without guidance and it's caused some serious health issues. So you always want to know who you can turn to that's a licensed professional to be able to look at your labs, explain what's going on, and be able to ensure that you're doing these things in a safe manner.
Yeah, and again, desperation is part of it.
Understood. Yes.
People have been in that desert going thirsty, trying to find a way of getting out of that pain and suffering they're going through. And so I understand it because, listen, the first year as a long hauler in helping start first dozen or so long COVID rooms, you would see, people were elderberry, this and that, pine needle tea, and I mean, you name it, they were. They were all aboard for any of it, and there was no rhythm, no madness to the rule. Is just let's just try it because they were suffering so badly. Now we're 5.5 years later into it. There are some good protocols that are out there. Before MAHA, it was the Tippins protocol that was being used. We knew ivermectin, not only the mechanism why it was working so well, but we also knew that because of the immunosuppression that was happening, like in HIV type of suppression, that the interferon signaling was being suppressed. That was your early primer. That was also an HIV thing. And so they would take interferon to help with the interferon pathways. Well, ivermectin has a primer in it for your interferon signaling. So that's why a lot of people do well. But like you were saying, listen, you couldn't get it RX. It was in short supply because once ivermectin was getting out there, and then people started going to the stores, and then they started getting that paste. Right. And they didn't realize that paste was weight-based paste for horses.
Yes.
So, 2,000-pound horse, whatever the hell they weigh, and they're going a whole dose of that crap, and it tastes terrible too, by the way. It's god awful. But so they didn't know how to read the dose paste, and there was a couple of people that actually had poison control because it took the whole damn thing. So it's all fair to speak on all angles of this, because essentially your body has been so destroyed. It's like how I used to use the analogy from automobiles. I'd say it literally is like you had an automobile with 30,000 miles and now it's got 1 million miles on it.
Right.
And you're asking the mechanic to fix it over the phone going, hey, my car's not running right. How do I fix it? Because so many people reach out to me through this and go, help me. And I go, well, I need to have you here with me so I can have my hands on you and I can really get underneath the hood and see what the hell's going on.
Such a good analogy. Because,
you got 60,000. People don't understand some of these stats when I say it, but it's true. We have 60,000 miles of arteries and veins. 60,000 miles of arteries and veins. We knew it was causing thrombosis, clotting, microclotting. What could go wrong with 60,000 miles of veins and arteries with that kind of thing going on, right? So Cody already has that clotting disease. Yes. All right, so that's a major. Hey, we got to really make sure we are operating 1,000% on making everything copacetic.
Right.
Now imagine millions of people having very similar thrombi issues in 2020 and 2021, and I know this. I'm going, holy crap, because I lost a good friend of mine to a pulmonary embolism at 38 years old because they sent him home with nothing. And then once they got him back to the hospital, 7 days of respiratory distress. What could go wrong here? Not give him anything, let his family be out there while he died from pulmonary embolism. So this is why we speak, because we understand the engineering of the body. We understand how complicated it can be. And when it's inflamed and all the hormones are being dysregulated and your vitamin levels are being depleted because your body's fighting like hell to put out the fire, that's why we can't just go, here's a set protocol.
Exactly.
Because everybody has so many different comorbidities. We were already dealing with elevated stroke issues, cardiac issues, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, juvenile diabetes, all these comorbidities that they know if you're carrying a few of those, your chances of being above the dirt without being treated in this planet is 24 to 48 months. Because it's just how the system works. So, we're no better than an automobile, and we're just trying to be the mechanics, being good mechanics going, you can make some very basic changes. Change your food. You're usually going to have an H1, H2, or H3 response going on. So your histamines are thrown off. So a lot of the food that you're putting into your body is causing some of this inflammation, causing some of this, histamine, where you just feel like you eat something and you're going to pass out for 2 hours. That's your histamine response going on.
Right.
And so these are just things that we know that even our general practitioners, for whatever reason, have thrown it all out and are not looking at the patients in a way that they were trained to do. Too many of them are algorithm trained. I was trained as a free medics. Like Harry Fisher. I love Harry. Harry's picking them up and I'm getting them on the backside.
Yep.
And Harry's got so much PTSD the rest of his life. I feel so bad for him. We need to get him into a serious PTSD program, because what we've all seen with our own 2 eyes and have spoken of, most people don't understand that we have HIPAA on us.
Correct.
So the reason why you don't hear full stories, full details, nonstop, it's because we got HIPAA. Now, HIPAA was thrown out the door in 2020, 21. If you show us your vaccine cards, we didn't care about that.
Right.
But to report on, or you couldn't eat, you couldn't travel, but to report on people having strokes and serious adverse reactions and dying, we can't talk about that.
It's absolutely wild. And, again, speaking of the trauma, it's one of the things that I think makes us so empathetic, because, I will forever carry a lot of the trauma and the things that I saw and the things that I went through, and still the things that are occurring today where people don't trust you, or they don't think that you're telling the truth, or that you have nefarious reasons for speaking out. But, you know, like since 2021, 2022, when I came forward, it was just like, you know, at this point you had to put a face to a name. You have to explain what you were seeing as best you could. Again, as Dan was saying, within the rules of HIPAA, and kind of giving a generalization of what you were seeing, and, you know, some stories that you could elaborate on without identifying the patients. It's just so important that I believe there are hundreds of thousands of people that are seeing what we're seeing, but they are refusing to come forward because they're afraid to lose their job, be blacklisted, be told they're crazy, lose friends and family. People like Dan and I and so many others, I've already been through that. Like, you had to make a choice, right? And so again, as Dan always talks about, being a Christian, at that point, I had to make a decision. What was more important? Keeping my head down, not saying anything, and acting like it wasn't happening, or actually trying to get the word out, give education, try to have people come together to see what I was seeing, to see if I wasn't the only one seeing this, and see how we could save lives and try to prevent these tragedies from happening over and over again. So like Harry, you know, as Dan was saying, you know, seeing it on the front lines, being a first responder, and then dropping him off to people like me in the hospital, it's really humbling, because you just won't get those faces and names ever out of your head. But me personally, I'll speak for myself. We use it as a form of fuel to be able to move forward, and to be able to take these tragic events and the PTSD and all the sadness and darkness and turn it into light, to give hope for others that, you know, we're here, right? A lot of people think I'm vaccine injured. I'm not. I am a vaccine injury advocate. I'm a registered nurse of 20 plus years. I'm here as an ally. And so there's a little confusion with that. And that's why people are so like, oh, wow, that's really intense. But because there's so many that are not ready to step forward and come together with people like Dan and I, that we stand in that gap. And hopefully, like Dan said, in the next, you know, month, we're able to bring more people from all walks of life, not just in healthcare, to share stories and to explain what they're doing on their end to make change, so that, you know, you're not alone. And hopefully that this will empower you to want to join us, and or reach out for more information on how you can get involved.
Exactly. And you know, God chose us because he knew our fortitude. He knew that the ones that are chosen, that are actually answered the call, and are, you know, steadfast and standing in the gap. God bless you. We know it's not an easy task,
right?
But show me anywhere in the Bible,
right,
where they're serving God faithfully and helping God's people during biblical times, where it was a fun party. I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
You know,
it's very true.
So that's part of the acceptance of it. You know, the afterlife is our reward. And while we're here on this planet being good citizens and faithful servants to God, all we can do is stay humble, speak our truth, and hopefully our flock finds us, because we're shepherds looking for our sheep. We've left the 99 looking for the one.
Amen.
We want to help the ones that are out there that feel like God doesn't hear them, that they're not loved. They are. God loves us. God loves all of his people. He did not do this. This is man-made. This is man-planned, and God is here to wreck their shit 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, of bringing us forward, the voices, and going, enough. We will not bow down. There is no hill we will not die on when it comes to helping our brothers and sisters, because God's people are not for genocide. It's not happening. It is happening in real time, but the overall effect is not what they're going to get. The Charlie Kirks of the world, we are the Charlie Kirks. We might not have billions of people next to us and millions of dollars in banks accounts, but we have God's love. We have God's, you know, I had to learn how to let go and let God.
Whew, yeah, take us to church, Dan.
You know, when you've lost everything. Look, I say this in 21, in March of 21, when I was sat down and I was diagnosed at early stages of Alzheimer's and CTE, I had to take a deep breath in that one, because I knew what CTE was, and I sure as hell know what Alzheimer's is. And you would never imagine today that I had it.
Right.
But believe me, I've lived it, and I got the receipts to prove it. And Dr. George Roselle is a he is a living saint. And when we have funding, I'm going to make sure there's a whole damn ward made up of what this man does in neurofeedback and brain mapping. Because at the end of the day, what will happen from this, just like what happened to Charlie, where a globe has been awoken to Christianity and the real Christians, is we will have better ways of taking care of patients.
Amen.
We'll have not a sick care system, but a wellness care system that focuses on what you put in, how you live, and things that you can take that will naturally help the immune system regulate or fight antivirally. And then we will create programs, because what has happened is we've been isolated. Like, we just speak on screens now. The injured and the people that have been through this hell need to come together, just like we go to church or like we go to a concert, and we need to have group meetings and therapy meetings and sessions to help people get through this. Right. And if it's Christianity and that does it, awesome. Because God's love, when you truly, like, I was one of the happiest people. I was always a joyful person, and it's really hard to be full of joy when you've seen nothing but death for 5.5 years, or when you've had death at your door and you were told you had less than 30 days to live, and that was 5 years ago. Yeah. And to have replicated with others, that's a blessing, but it's still a curse, because at nighttime I don't see dead people in my sleep. I see the sick people needing help. Right. And to know that there's things that we can do to help them is heartbreaking. And to know that there's other organizations, other 501(c)s that claim that they want to be a part of the solution, but they don't seem to want to join teams. Right. They get into their cliques. Yes. Just like we're back in high school. Right. I didn't give a damn about a clique in high schold. I didn't care who you were. I just go wherever I wanted to. And it's almost like that movie Time with Justin Timberlake. Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think I've seen that one.
Basically, it's a sci-fi movie that once you turn 25, you no longer age, but you have time on your hand, like 1 year of time. Oh. And everything costs you time. And people live in different time zones. So the different zones, how much money they have. So they separate society in their different ways. The hoods, the rich neighborhoods, everyone moves differently. I go everywhere. I don't give a crap. But what I do see is a different level of awareness, or the cliques that have more money in the health movement stick in their little money health clique. Yep. And I go, that has nothing to do with the price of tea in China, when people who can't afford that need help. So the salt of the earth peoples who I'm trying to connect with are Christians out there that are just brothers and sisters that are open to hearing these conversations and go, here am I, send me. Amen. Or what can I do to help serve God and our people? And let's see, I got one more clip. I got a couple more, but which one do I want to play? There's so much fun stuff on here these days. All right, I'll play this doctor, because I also feel that the more times you hear a message from different voices and different perspectives from different areas, it'll help you have more data to kind of chew on, munch on. Right. Well, here's the doctor speaking and what she's seeing. So let's listen to her. 2 minutes.
COVID vaccine, and then 2 months later in the hospital with multi-organ failure, or some weird pneumonia, or RSV that kills them, or all sorts of weird things that go on, or a cancer. That is a hospitalization after a vaccination. That's reportable. People never think that they think, oh, it's within the first 48 hours. No, what if that's the only thing they did from the time that they got the vaccine till they got their turbo cancer, right? I mean, that's reportable. These are observational things the patient will tell you. I have not felt right since I got this COVID vaccine. They tell you that the adverse event needs to be reported. I'm talking even about people that got a COVID vaccine and then 2 months later are in the hospital with multi-organ failure, or some weird pneumonia, or RSV that kills them, or all sorts of weird things that go on, or a cancer. That is a hospital.
So she's speaking on the injuries that are not being connected to the hospitalizations. And that's all been by design. That's not even by accident, because the news made sure that if you got the jab and you took your two, you weren't going to get sick. You weren't going to get infected. You weren't going to spread, right? And then towards the end is, well, did you die? I feel like we're in the what was that movie where they all go to Vegas? And the little Asian guy jumps out of the vehicle naked.
Oh, geez. What is it called? The Dan, you asked me that question.
The Hangover.
Hangover,
Yeah.
Jesus.
And,
And
and
Vegas,
that
yeah.
meme that was popular about a decade
Did you
ago.
die?
Did you die? And that's essentially what they've done. They muddied the waters to what we would know as traditional science. Like, hey, they did this, and then this happens. Well, there must be a cause and correlation between what the hell's happening. So
Literally.
they have purposely misled our people. They purposely lied to our people, and now our people are confused and going, what do we do? Well, come to the voices that have been speaking truth and that are only trying to be a solution to the problem.
Amen.
Next month, I'm excited. Once we start the show, we'll have multiple people on. I think, this would be a point where we could probably really blow this one up, because everyone that said yes so far have pretty good platforms that have good topics to talk about, and they're excited. And when I hear humble, like I'm humbled that you asked me, I'm like, I'm humbled that you're coming on, like, because
Amen.
This is just a bunch of people that have stood when the darkness is trying to put us on our knees. And we've all said, 2 of these, 7 days a week on Sunday, we're not going anywhere.
We're not.
And our people will continue to need this help. Unfortunately, it's not going to get better. It's only going to keep getting worse with the chronic illness that we're seeing. You're seeing it. A lot of posts seeing it. When you're state surgeon general is seeing this in the data and the systems in the hospitals and reporting on it, you got to go, okay, I really need to figure out what I can do for our family.
Amen.
And organizations like the McCullough Foundation, I love Nicholas. I love his work.
Yes.
They got their products they're pushing right now. One of the ones that to me that finally someone's speaking on this, and we showed last time, the best way to help protect you during the flu and cold season is find some type of spray. This is Copperine. This is Dr. Braun's product, but McCullough Foundation has their own, where you spray orally.
Right.
Get your eyeballs.
Yep.
Twice a day, 3 times a day, and that'll help give you a level of protection. That'll help your immune system, because what happens with these spike proteins, they get here, they just start
replicating,
and then they drop. They're like little soldiers. They know what to do, because they know if they go immediately into the lungs, they don't stand a chance. But if they build up enough, then they can get you. So that's just a good little preventative thing that's out there right now. McCullough's got a couple products. Like I have no problem with people making money off of products that are actually working.
That'll help. Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Because big pharma, they get you all day long. Yeah. So, these people that have put their reputations on the line deserve to earn a living from that, and especially when they're helping our brothers and sisters out there. So, all right, Nurse Nicole, thank you. You are absolutely amazing in what you do. All the lionesses are outside your circle, and in your inner circle are absolutely amazing. I look forward to bringing everyone on and to growing our tribe out, our pride out, and connecting globally, because there's a bunch of advocates outside of the U.S. that I want to start grasping onto. And so we can show the full global picture, because I know Americans, I know this. Right. We think it's just us. It's just, no, it's not. No,
sure isn't.
We're not that lucky. We don't own this one. We help with it, but we need to come together and share and grow this, build this army of salt of the earth, humble creatures that just want to help.
Amen.
Anything else before we get off? Because I know we covered. I know we basically covered. Is it the right to try? What's the name?
So it's Cody's Law, and then we have the sudden death in the Young Reporting Act, SB 188, which Senator Ileana Garcia has filed in the state of Florida, still needing a House representative. I'll just end with this, because I know we've done and covered these topics before. There's so many great people out there amongst the darkness. There is a lot of people that are willing to stand up, like Dan and I, to be arm in arm, to what I like to always say, hold the line. There is hope. You are loved. Please know that there is always another way, and that, if you want to reach out to us, please do. Just stay. We want people to know that there is hope, and it is coming, and there are people that are working diligently behind the scenes to make it happen, so that everyone is seen, recognized, and some sort of help is on the way. So just know that we're out here, we're here, and we're always willing to stand in and hold the line and be there for you guys. So thank you for having me.
All right. I thought of something else. I was talking to you about the other night. We talked late through text. There's several things I want to accomplish, and that God kind of put me down back in 2020. One was a bus tour. Children's Health Defense does an amazing job of going out and recording stories of the advocate and the injured. Mine is more of a coalition of people that, in my mindset, that we travel to like 20 cities. It's make America, healthy and again, but through community efforts, and to share stories with the experts like Macus and whatnot, but more about let's bring it to them, because you can only do so much online.
Right.
And to get out there and connect, because to me, too many of these, and you've been a part of them, and there's nothing wrong with having the doctors there speaking, but I think we need to see more of the front line, the ones that are currently doing it every single day, and to give some spark of hope to the ones that need it. Two, I think there's been a ton of great documentaries done. I think we need to kind of update it with a little different perspective on that global connection with the root cause integrative and success stories and ways that we can get out of the desert.
I love it.
Because people need more real hope.
Yes.
And then because I'm an old dude, I remember the Jerry Lewis telethons and how important they were to society and how important they were to the children that were suffering this, and knowing that vaccine-injured children and vaccine-injured long COVID children are desperate to help, that we should create and start doing a once-a-year marathon telethon.
I love it.
Where we have all of us around the world,
right.
Entertainment, because there's entertainers that are injured that are speaking out.
Right.
There are good songwriters out there that can give some entertainment, and that we should start creating that global 24-hour campaign of awareness for once a year. And then we raise funds, and then we donate those to different organizations that are doing good things. So those are like the three things on my positivity outlook that I'd like to accomplish in the next 12 months.
I love it.
If you're listening out there, all five would be right now. But if you're listening and you have a good business, you're a patriot, you want to be a part of the solution, you want to donate, we're a 501c3. We're all about grabbing and adding partners together, brand building. The new podcast that we'll be doing called Frontline Messengers with the people. Like, it's all about connecting the groups and being a bigger army to deal with, because we're not going away. The lions of Judah are only going to get louder. Amen. Christians are only going to come closer together during these biblical times. Jericho is happening, and we are circling the wagons, and we're going, enough. There's 2.5 billion Christians out there. Well, let's start acting like it. There's God's people are not for genocide, and we all love you, and we thank you for tuning in. Share us, like us, comment. We'll be back next month. Next couple of weeks, we'll start putting up, because I think it's going to be the second week of November.
Okay.
I think because our months are kind of, because the third week's going to be Thanksgiving. So like 2.5 weeks, we're going to launch this new show. No big deal.
I love it. I love it.
We got a great group of people that want to join us and be a part of this fight, so I'm excited. Thank you for tuning in to Dan the Messenger podcast, brought to you by Hope for Humanity 2020, Hope House here in Orlando, Nurses Out Loud, Nurse Nicole, my sidekick on this. Thank you.